Today on the Athlete's Mindset, I'm joined by Emma Spence, one of the most decorated gymnasts in University of Nebraska history. Emma recently wrapped up her collegiate career as a three-time first-team All-Big Ten selection in 2023, 2024, and 2025. She represented Team Canada on the international stage and served as an alternate in the Tokyo and Paris Olympic Games. Throughout her career, Emma has exemplified resilience, discipline, and passion, balancing the pressures of elite gymnastics with the mental challenges that come with performing at the highest level. In this episode, we'll talk about her upbringing in the sport of gymnastics, her growth as an athlete and leader at Nebraska, her Olympic journey, and how she's learned to prioritize her mental well-being both in and out of the gym. I'm so excited for you to hear Emma's story and insight. Let's get into it. Emma, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So there's so much to talk about when it comes to your story as a gymnast, but I want to start way back. Just when you were younger, when did it kind of hit you that gymnastics could be a thing that really moves forward for you?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I actually started gymnastics because my younger sister started it before me. So I have two younger sisters. It was the middle one that started because of a birthday party. She ran a birthday party that was gymnastics, loved it, and then did it because of that. And then she would come home and do flips around the house. And I was so jealous. I wanted to be able to do that too. And that's kind of how I got into it. And I really just did it for fun for so long. And then I eventually got to like the national level. And I think at that point I was like, okay, I got to start like taking this seriously and kind of going all in if that's something that I wanted to do. So it's probably like all just like for fun until I was about maybe like 12, 13, and then things started to get a little bit more serious from there.
Yeah. I feel like it's crazy anytime someone really solidifies a sport because at first you're like, this is just for fun. And then you're like, oh, maybe like college could be a thing in this, or I could go somewhere we could really take off. So I've heard you talk about how the NCAA is kind of not really a main focus when it comes to Canadian athletes for some sports. Can you talk about how you ended up at the University of Nebraska and what that was like, thinking you're just going to be focusing on the Olympics to competing at the NCAA level?
Yeah, so I was competing in Canada up until I guess I came to Nebraska. I was on the national team for a total of 8 years. And basically, coming into Nebraska, I just finished. It was right after the Tokyo Olympics were done. And at that point, I was like, I'm done with elite gymnastics. I'm done competing for the national team, and I'm just going to focus to NCAA gymnastics and only do that. But it was really great. You know, it was also during COVID, so I wasn't able to visit Nebraska or
Mhm.
honestly had no idea about anything what Nebraska was. I didn't really know what NCAA gymnastics was. The coaches reached out to me, and at first I was like, "No, I don't think I want to do this. I'm good." And then during COVID, once we were in lockdown, I had more time to think about it, and I was like, "You know what? This is something I want to do." And I just kind of was like, I talked to Heather and I was like, okay, I think this is something that I want to do. She's like, all right, yeah, come on. And I was like, okay. And then I moved to Nebraska. It was pretty last minute compared to a lot of the other girls that committed in my class. And I mean, I'm really glad that I came here. It was a really great experience. I was here for 4 years and there was definitely a lot of adjusting to do when I did get here at first, but I'm so glad that I made the choice to do it.
Yeah, I mean, being from Nebraska myself, I can like you see either University of Nebraska, and it's the thing here. You know, it's college
Mhm.
football Saturday, or there's any sport going on. There's going to be people that show up. What made you choose Nebraska, especially when it was COVID, and you really had no clue what it was truly like?
Yeah, and it's crazy because I really didn't talk to any other schools either. So I guess the main thing was just the coaches. They were really, really great. I didn't really get to meet anyone on the team either.
Mhm.
Heather, so our head coach, Heather Brink, gave me FaceTime tours of the stadium, you know, the athlete areas, the gym, stuff like that. So basically I made my decision based on those interactions with Heather and the other coaches and the things that they were showing me about the facilities and stuff. And I was like, you know what? This is really cool. This is better than what I had training back home. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I
Yeah.
wasn't too sure what I was getting into, but it was incredible. Like every single thing I kept seeing, and my mom and my sister dropped me off. We were like, this is like in the movies. Like it's like High School Musical.
That's so funny. I mean, I grew up in Nebraska and then went out to Cal State Fullerton to play baseball out there. And I mean, I just went from state to state, not country to country. But when I first got there, I really struggled. I think I wanted to make, it seemed like I was totally fine. When I got out there, told my parents, oh yeah, everything's perfect. When I was struggling at practice, struggling to, transition. What was that transition like for you? And did you have any struggles with that?
Oh, yeah, I did. And actually, this is interesting because I talked to my parents about this yesterday. So
Mhm.
over the weekend was Canadian Thanksgiving. So it's like basically the same thing as the American one, but we just do it
Yeah.
earlier, I guess. So I
Okay.
missed that on the weekend. And I was talking to my parents, catching up about how that went with my family. And they were like, because I feel like every year it's not getting easier to be away from home. Like I thought, like, oh, I would get used to this. It's going to get easier, but it's definitely not, especially over the weekend, getting videos of my whole family together, goofing around, just doing all these things. And we were just talking about, they were like, did you feel that freshman year? I was like, oh, yeah, I did. But it was almost harder to talk to them because it made me miss them even more. So I kind of
Mhm.
isolated myself from my family in a sense because seeing all the fun things they were doing that I was missing out on and just communicating with them made me miss them even more. So I feel like the biggest adjustment was probably being away from my family just because it was also coming out of COVID when we were literally in lockdown together. Like
Mhm.
for so long, we were just the family together, you know? So being away from that was definitely difficult. And then there were just different adjustments. Like I wouldn't say the culture is that different, but at the time it felt like it because it was just, I was like, oh my gosh, I just moved to a new country by myself. And honestly, like, the biggest thing that threw me off was the names of the stores because I didn't recognize them. So, like,
Mhm.
some of my friends would be like, "Oh, let's go to Hy-Vee," and I'm like, "Is that
What are you talking
shopping?"
about? Yeah.
Dude, like, I had no idea what, like, the names were. So driving around, I just felt a little clueless. I didn't have a car my freshman year either, so that was
Mhm.
a whole other thing as well. But just feeling out of the loop because I wasn't aware of, like, just how things were. But now that I've been here for over 4 years, it's definitely, like, I know what's going on and I feel pretty, like, comfortable. But there were definitely some things that took some time getting used to.
Yeah, I mean, when I was out there, I felt the same exact way. You put it perfectly. Is I didn't want my parents to think that like I wasn't okay. I wanted them to think like, yeah, I'm killing it out here, everything's fine. And then when I would talk to them, I would almost like distance myself because I didn't want them to worry about me or anything like that because it's such a huge change. And then you almost just tell yourself this is what you do. You go to college or you leave home at some point, and you just have to deal with that. Did you get to a point where maybe you did speak up a little bit, or what advice would you give to other athletes, which we'll get into with like enhanced pathways when they go elsewhere, how to
Mhm.
handle that transition?
Yeah, and yeah, that's a good way to put it. When I was struggling, I didn't wanna tell my mom specifically either because I knew
Mhm.
it would make her stressed, and there was nothing she could do from a different country to, like, help
Mhm.
me in that sense. So if I was actually struggling, like, I would pretend that I wasn't because I know it would make it harder for her knowing that there was nothing she could do. So if I had anything going on, I found a different, I guess, parental figure is the way to
Mhm.
put it. Like, I would lean on my coaches a little bit more. My head coach is really great. Like, I would go in her office, and if I had stuff I wanted to talk through, she was always there to listen and help me through it. And same thing with the sports psychologist. I feel like if I had anything that, like, I needed advice or wanted to talk through, but I didn't want to concern my parents or, like,
Mhm.
have them overthink anything, I would go to them. And I guess just finding a good group of people just in the community, like whether it's friends, whether it's teammates, or like the old, not older, but like coaches and staff that are there for you. I think that was the best thing I could have done. And then once I was more comfortable, I think I did have that conversation with my family probably 1 or 2 summers in when I was home, just being like,
Mhm.
hey, like I just find it really hard to talk about this stuff, but then I would tell them, like, 6 months later, and they're like, "What do you mean you were going through this and you didn't say anything?" I was like, "Well, I didn't want to at the time."
Yeah, I'm good now though. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, "I just didn't want you to stress, but I figured it out. We're all good."
Mhm.
Um, So I guess just finding a community that you can go to if you feel like you in your my situation, you don't want to stress out your mom.
Mhm. Yeah. Did you, so kind of transitioning to the gymnastic side, as a freshman, you're in a new environment. It's a different, training style and just, not a different form of the sport you've been playing, but it's different. How did you deal with that? Did you have any struggles, as a freshman, just kind of finding your groove, or what was that transition like in the sport of gymnastics?
So I also never watched an NCAA gymnastics meet before
Okay.
competing. So that was probably my first mistake. Um, there weren't many like mistakes, I'd say, just learning lessons. Like the format of a competition, I had like they told us like a little bit, like they'd be like, okay, yeah, this is how it's gonna go when you get to the meet. And like I was just like nodding my head, like, yeah, okay. Like I feel like I would know how this is gonna go. I've done gymnastics like for years, right? And it was the layout was different, the structure was different. And so that definitely caught me off guard the first meet. I'm like getting ready for the wrong event. My coach is like, no, no, we're on vault. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So just figuring out the way that the meet actually works and like the rotations of the events and the routine structure is also different in the NCAA. It's, I wouldn't say easier, but like the routines, there's less difficulty in it. Because you're going for perfection over difficulty and like the execution side of things instead. So really working on the details, trying to get my routines to be as perfect as they can be and not necessarily just the hardest skills. So there were definitely some changes of like the mindset and the approach that I brought into the meet because like the layout and the format was a little bit
Mhm.
different.
Can you kind of go dive into that a little bit more of what, kind of the differences are competing for, let's say, Team Canada at Worlds or and competing at Nebraska, just how the gymnastics changes?
Yeah. So when you're in elite, I'm going to call it elite gymnastics, international
Okay.
gymnastic. When you compete in that, there is no cap to the difficulty level of your routines that you're doing. So if you can execute a routine that's like really, really hard, then like you can do it and you will score very well. In
Mhm.
the NCAA, you start out of a 10, hopefully. The goal is to start of a
Mhm.
10, but you can't do
Yeah.
more than a 10. So even if you can do some really crazy hard skills, there's no point in doing it because you can just get deducted on it. You're not going to get that bonus like you would in elite. So that's why some people would consider it easier. But because everyone has the same start value, you have to really be good at what you do to reduce the amount of deductions.
Mhm.
In elite gymnastics, you can kind of go off of that difficulty and be like, well, if my
Mhm.
difficulty is really, really high, but it's not great, like from a execution standpoint, you can still probably win with that. The fans, I would say, is different. It's a lot more quiet and just calmer watching elite gymnastics, like the
Mhm.
international stage. There's not as much celebrations or just having fun throughout the meet. It's a little bit more strict and serious. And I feel like that's more just kind of built into the culture of it. Whereas in NCAA gymnastics, you're celebrating, your teammates are on the sidelines dancing and cheering you on. And
Hmm.
as soon as you finish, you're jumping up and down together. And that was something that was so fun. Um, those are, I'd say, the main things. When you're competing NCAA, you're as a team. I feel like I felt the pressure of the team a lot more than I did internationally because even though I was representing Team Canada, I was also more individual. So having that pressure of doing good for the team at Nebraska and wanting to succeed in that sense was also a little bit of an adjustment in like the ranking of like you start off, you're the lead off or you're the anchor at the end, like those positions on like where you go up in lineup kind of mean a lot too. And that kind of changes for me. It was almost every year. So there were some little things that I'd say made it different. And those are probably like the main examples I can think of right now.
Yeah. I mean, you transitioned pretty well, as you were a three-time first team All Big Ten selection in 23, 24, and 25. How did you maintain that consistency?
I think honestly being coming from competing internationally so often was really helpful because I had that international experience under my belt, like competing at a really high level under a lot of pressure that when I was competing in NCAA, I was like, I could fall back on like, okay, I've done this at this level on this stage. I know I can do it now when it counts. And the routines were a little bit shorter than the routines that I was
Mhm.
competing internationally,
Mhm.
which was also nice because I could really just focus like one thing at a time, don't have to get too ahead of myself, and just really be able to trust the practice and the work that I put into it. And then we also trained a lot for NCAA, like a lot of reps, a lot of workouts too. And just stayed in good shape throughout the whole preseason to prepare for the long NCAA season. So I actually felt probably the most prepared I ever had in the NCAA. By the time that season would roll around, that I was able to just kind of relax as much as I could and just let whatever happen happen. And because of the reps behind it, it was able to go pretty smoothly for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much similarity between baseball and gymnastics, but one of them is that like you're on a team, but it's also very individual. Like when I would be
Mhm.
in the box hitting, it's just me up there. Like no one else can, help me out really. It's just me. And similar to you competing at Nebraska, when you're on a team, but every single routine is just you, how do you kind of handle that pressure of wanting to do well for your team, but also you're on a huge stage? How do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, I feel like this might sound bad, but when I was competing at Nebraska, that's when I cared the most about the team, and
Mm.
not that I didn't when I was competing for Canada, but the focus for NCAA is so much more on the team. And I felt that pressure so much more than I did internationally. Um, and I struggled with it a lot because I put so much on myself to be at my best because I wanted to do that for my teammates and just the university. The ways that I handle it, I have a lot of different things that I did over the years and things that I've tried. Um, Going to this last year, my last year of NCAA, I feel like I figured it out for the most part. I would write words on my hands. So I would write like 2 to 3 words of like whatever I'd like to focus on throughout the meet. I would bring fidget toys during the meet. I would sit there like before my routines and I'd be like playing with fidget toys. Talking to people is something that I found really beneficial. Some people don't. It depends. Because I do all around and not all girls compete all events, I feel like I figured out if I'm standing and jumping up and down cheering for the girls and competing throughout the whole meet, that was a lot of like energy that I was just
Mhm.
like leaving my body
Gone.
throughout the
Yeah.
competition. So, um, for myself, I found that it worked really well if I just like sat during the other events. So like I would compete or waiting to compete, I would sit instead of like jumping up and down. So just like figured out the little ways to kind of be at my best when I had to be. Another thing I did before beam, I really didn't like competing beam. I got so nervous, my whole body would be shaking like before I even got up on the thing. So I would like lay on the floor, like fully like starfish, grounding every part of my body, just like close my eyes for like 10 minutes before I went, to really just like calm myself down. And I felt like that really helped. Sometimes listening to music. Like I tried so many different tricks, but those ones are probably the best ones. And it sounds lazy, but sitting down and laying down throughout the meet really helped me.
Yeah, I mean, that was one tough thing I always struggled with is before games, there'd be so many times where you're kind of just sitting around and I hated it. I was like, can we like just not even warm up and just like get going? Because I can't just handle this sitting around. And one thing our strength coach told me was just see 3 things, feel 3 things, and hear 3 things. So I'd be like snapping in my ear, like pointing out things, like just touching random
Yeah.
stuff, and it would like make me more present. Are there any kind of tips that made you just feel a little bit more present so you're not kind of overthinking or, having negative thoughts going into a routine?
I feel like the biggest thing for me was focusing on breathing. Like, you ever heard of box breathing? Like the 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out,
Yeah.
hold for 4. So like doing that kind of stuff a lot. Um, and like doing that while like playing with a fidget toy, like
Hmm.
those like popping ones, like just something that like wasn't focusing on necessarily what I had to do. Another thing was watching my teammates before me stressed me out a little bit. So like usually I was sixth up to go. And when the first two would go, I would watch the first two. And then the next like three, I would kind of just like turn around, do my own thing so that I wasn't like too focused in on what they did. Cause if they did a mistake, then like that would put extra pressure on me. So
Hmm.
I just tried not to focus on that too much either. But I definitely would say the breathing. And it's interesting because you have to have kind of like a different approach to each event. So beam, for example, I have to really, really be calm. Like I literally starfish on the floor. But then before vault, like I need to be hype. I'm like jumping up and down before I go, like jogging on the spot, like just like trying to get as much energy into myself before I go. Same thing with floor. Just like jumping up and down, like trying to be hype. And then bars was
Mhm.
a little bit more calm as well. So going around doing all 4 events, I had to make sure that I was kind of like peaking in the right energy level that I needed before I went, if that makes sense. So having to figure that out also took a couple years.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, like I feel like in most sports, you wanna avoid the roller coaster, like, you wanna just be calm all the time, and then you can get a little excited, but back to calm. Like, I feel like that's gotta be so hard just going from getting super excited, and then you gotta chill out.
Hmm.
Um, I want to kinda talk about your leadership at the University of Nebraska. When you are someone who's, getting all these honors, nationally and in the conference, and you're someone who your teammates look up to, what are some kinda traits that you think makes a good leader?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like, okay, there's different types of leaders. Like there's the ones that are like more vocal and like open. I feel like I wasn't necessarily the most open one on the team and like vocal leader, but I was probably more the one that would lead by example.
Mhm.
So more like throughout the way that I was training, the way that I was taking care of my body, the way that I was focusing on academics, like kind of just all those pieces and more of like a role model side of it rather than like a direct like in your face, but like
Yeah.
leader like that. Um, and then I was team captain for the last 2 years of my career. And I think that position allowed me to open up a little bit more because I had to in some situations. And I was able to do it, but it wasn't necessarily something that was like my go-to. Because
Mhm.
I also feel like I had a pretty good relationship with all the girls on the team. And like if they had any issues or anything, like they would come up to me individually and like ask for my opinion or my advice on it. So it was more like a silent leader, I feel like.
Mhm.
But I was able to have really strong relationships with a lot of the girls on the team. And then, yeah, if there was something that I needed to speak up about, or they'd want me to do it, like I was able to do that as well. But I feel like it was a lot more by doing the things that I was doing, especially because I was pretty busy. Like I would leave to go compete for Canada and then I'd come back. Like I was not there all the time. Um, or even going really into it mentally there because when I was competing all around throughout a competition, I couldn't put all my energy into the team right before I went because I needed to focus on myself right before I competed to get myself in the best headspace I could be in to perform the best on the like in that routine for the team, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So I wasn't the kind of person that could actively be yelling and cheering throughout the whole competition for everyone because I also had to prioritize what I needed to do to get ready and get in the best headspace to go and do my routines at the same time. So balancing that was really interesting. Because yeah, there's always like different ways that you would see a leader and like
Mhm.
there were times where people would be like, yeah, like you're not cheering that much. They wouldn't really say that, but like the reason, like we would have a conversation about it, saying, well, the reason I can't really do that is because when I'm 6 up to go, I need to make sure that like I'm in the right headspace and I'm not just like screaming right before I complete my beam routine. And like the team was really understanding of that as well because beam is just like that. But being able to have those conversations with the team was also really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes a great leader is just someone who can build that relationship, like you said, is someone who is not going to be kind of that like rah rah in your face yelling at you, but kind of just like, I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to show you kind of the ropes. And, if you do need something, like we can have a one on one conversation. Cause I think when you're competing in any sport, at the NCAA level. Like those just kind of become your best friends. And you're just like, I'm
Hmm.
with you all the time. Like I know you so well. Like I'm here to help. And I think that's something as a team captain, you probably did a great job of. What was some kind of advice that you would kind of give to your teammates, especially when you were, already a two-time first team Big Ten and there were younger girls on the team? What was kind of some advice that like you tried to instill in them?
I think the biggest thing, and this is kind of based on what I learned my freshman year. So if we're looking at the people on the freshman year coming in, is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think I learned that not the hard way, but it took me a while to get that or feel comfortable with that because I really wanted to be able to do everything by myself. But being able to leverage on the resources provided for us as student athletes, especially at the university, was very beneficial. And it's like at first I was like, oh yeah, I can figure it all out. I'm so independent. I can do it all myself.
Mhm.
But then I get to a point where I'm very overwhelmed with school and all this practice schedules and lifting and being away from my family. It's like, okay, maybe I should go talk to sports psychology, or maybe I should go ask and work with a tutor for a couple weeks until I feel more confident in this course. So just we have so many resources provided for us, being able to leverage that and lean into that when needed before it gets too out of control. Even more as like a maintenance piece, it doesn't even have to be like an every all the time thing, but just having that support in your corner if you are having a rough week or whatever it may be, it's already there in place if you need it rather than scrambling last minute when things are already too far gone to kind of get those supports started. And that was something that was really, really beneficial for me. And I didn't do that till probably going into second semester of my freshman year, but that was also when season was starting, so it was really good to have that support system in place.
If you're an athlete, you know the little things make the biggest difference. That's why I trust Momentous for my daily performance and recovery. Their vital aminos help with muscle repair and energy, while their creatine packs are perfect for building strength and consistency without any of the guesswork. Whether you're in the gym, on the field, or chasing your personal goals, Momentous supplements keep you fueled to perform your best. If you want to take your training and recovery to the next level, check them out at momentous.com and use the code Athletesmindset for 15% off. That's Athletesmindset for 15% off at checkout. Yeah. I mean, it took me until probably my senior year of playing when I was like, oh, I probably can talk to people like when I'm struggling. I don't have to make it seem like I'm perfectly fine all the time. And then I realized, I don't have to put so much pressure on myself. And my confidence grew so much from it. Gymnastics is a sport where you need confidence and there's going to be setbacks or there's going to be things that don't go your way. How did you kind of maintain your confidence and what advice would you maybe give to, younger gymnasts who are trying to build their confidence?
Ooh, I feel like this is something that was kind of always fluctuating for me. Um, I feel like being able to trust the work that you put into it before the competition or meet day or whatever it may be, knowing and like falling back on the amount of reps that you've done in the gym, the amount of times that you've competed, those routines or those skills or just competed overall. And then also, I don't know, I feel like talking to someone, like again, going back to that, if I wasn't feeling 100% confident, like I would go up to one of my teammates, like one of my best friends, be like, hey, like, I'm feeling really down. Like, I don't think I could do this. And then immediately she'll be like, yes, you can, like right in my
Yeah.
face. Like, okay, you need to stop talking like that. You're about to go out there. You're going to kill it. Don't even worry. So just having someone to bounce those thoughts off of, once again, I feel like the times that I'm struggling the most is when I kept my thoughts internal. So when I was able to have people and have those conversations with them, whether it's to talk about good things or things I may be struggling about or with or worrying about, bouncing ideas off someone else. And then hearing them from someone else is also makes me realize like, okay, I'm being dramatic. I don't need to be thinking about it like that. Was also really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've loved and so many guys and people I've had on this podcast, especially in baseball, have just talked about how you kind of have to see yourself in the third person point of view. We always are our biggest critics and we're always so hard on ourselves. We're always so worried. But when you would have a teammate go out there performing a routine, you would just be like, oh, yeah, they got it. And then if something they messed up something, you'd be like, it's all right. They'll get it the next time. But with ourselves, we're like, we're terrible. What's wrong with us? And so I think just kind of that mindset where you can kind of just realize maybe I am being a little dramatic or I'm like thinking way too much and I should just like treat myself as a friend. So I think that's great advice that you just had right there. I want to talk about your time as an Olympian. You were an alternate in the Tokyo Olympics and the Paris Olympic Games. What was that experience like and what did it feel like representing your country?
Yeah. So those experiences are so interesting because it's definitely something to be proud of, and it was definitely an honor, but it is also probably some of the most challenging times in my career both times around because being an alternate for an Olympics is basically like making your dream happen, but barely and
Mhm.
like not fully. So it's like I was so close to achieving it, but like I was literally like one spot away or two
Mhm.
spots away. So it was really hard to be proud of myself at first for that because it felt like I didn't achieve what I was going for, which is true. I didn't. I mean, obviously the goal would have been to make the Olympics, but um, I was alternate.
Mhm.
And ironically, both times I was non-traveling. So that was another thing to it is
Mhm.
that I trained with the Olympic team up until they left. And then they would go like to Tokyo or to Paris, and I had to stay back home and train.
Mhm.
And basically, I was on call in case someone got hurt, and then they would fly me over last minute. So I would do all the preparations and everything with the team, all the camps, got some of the Leos and everything. But then when the time came for them to go to the Olympics, it was like, "Okay, my job is done." And it was like that was the end of it. And it's like I sacrificed so much to get to that point. I put in all the reps, did all the work just to come like so short of achieving it all the way. And I mean, it's been a couple years now, especially since the first time I went around and did that. It was definitely character building.
Mhm.
But then that's also part of the reason why so the same thing ended up happening for the 2024 Olympics, and that's what I was so nervous about to try again for the Olympics. I was like, "You know what? I'm in a good headspace, like, my training's been going really well. I'm gonna give it a go for 2024." And especially I was on the world championship team that qualified Canada to the Olympics. So I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, like, might as well. I feel like I have to give it a go." I'm prepared. So I did. But the biggest thing I was worried about was not making the team again. Because I was like, I know how much that sucked the first time. So I put myself in that position again, knowing how it would feel if it didn't go my way. And that was something that I had a lot of conversations about with the coaches here, just being like, this is what I'm worried about. This is how it affected me last time. And they're like, okay, let's reframe it. And it was more of a mental side for me this time or last year. It was more focusing on myself, my goals, what I want out of it, and it was more about the journey rather than making it or not. And it was about I was in a much different headspace and environment just training in NCAA before going to the Olympic trials versus being I think I was 17 the first Olympic trials.
Mhm.
So different headspace and it was more just a dedication to my career. Give it one more go so I didn't have any regrets and just to say that like cuz I didn't want to look back in like 10 years from now and be like I wish I tried for the Olympics, you know?
Mhm.
And I never did. So I'm glad that I went for it. And the preparation was different because I was the only one that did NCAA the same season for Team Canada. So basically, Gymnastics Canada wanted everyone in the NCAA to defer a year and only focus on Team Canada stuff,
Mm.
prepping for the Olympics. And I just didn't think that made sense for me. And like I had my support system and my coaches and teammates here in Nebraska. So I said no. And that did affect the selection process. And I knew that it would a little bit going into it. But this time around was more for myself and to prove to myself that I could do it and kind of do it on my terms, do it healthy, do it with a great support system. So trials didn't go as I planned. I ended up falling on beam. Um,
Mhm.
I hate beam. So I fell on and I had to keep going. It wasn't even my last event. So I fell on beam. It was like my second skilled routine. And as soon as I fell, I knew, well, there's my chance at making the Olympics. And then I still had to continue the competition. That was tough. But
Mhm.
anyways, I ended up being an alternate again. Same kind of thing. I trained with the team up until they left and I stayed behind. But I was in a different headspace, you know. I still had one more year of NCAA gymnastics, and I knew that that was probably going to be the last year of my career. So I was able to shift gears a little bit, focus on enjoying my last year with my teammates, knowing that I gave it all I had and was able to walk away with no regrets after the last Olympic cycle. And I had my best NCAA season. I had a really great time with my team and some good results. So I was pretty happy with how it went, even though it wasn't necessarily what I was hoping for. I learned a lot from it. And I feel like those lessons I'm gonna have with me forever because yeah, there were so many highs and lows. 'Cause it's definitely an honor being that close to making
Mhm.
that, but it's like I still didn't. Um, and that part stings a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, coming from myself, who has never been even close to being an Olympian, like you've probably heard this so many times where people are like, you know how cool it is like to achieve like what you have, even being an alternate, but for yourself, for any athlete, when they're so close and it doesn't happen, it's so hard. But I do really appreciate kind of your mind switch going from I'll be happy if I make this Olympic team to I'm going to enjoy this journey. I'm going to enjoy this process. And then the best part about it is you don't get exactly what you want, but then you come back and you're first team All Big Ten again in 2025. So staying on this NCAA side, I want to hear just about your story, you and Yanni doing enhanced pathways, and just take the floor, talk about it. What is it and what's your goal with it?
Yeah, so Yanni Kanopoulos is a men's gymnast for Team Canada. And ironically, I've known him since I was like probably 10 years old. I used to train with his sister. My sisters used to train with his sister. And we ended up in Nebraska together. He was here a year before me. And then kind of, we weren't that close. Like we knew of each other, but we weren't like really good friends. And we started hanging out more when I was here. And anyways, we came up with the idea of enhanced pathways earlier this year, but we both were doing the elite circuit, so competing internationally as we were doing NCAA. So we had that in common. We're training for the same competitions. Like every time we would go to Canadian championships, we'd be training for it here, and then we would fly out together and just like go through all of that. So it was nice to have someone going through the same kind of journey that I was, because there was no one on the women's team that was doing it. And I mean, he didn't have anyone on the men's team doing it. So someone that kind of understood what the journey was like doing both competing for Canada and
Mhm.
NCAA. And ironically, he's also the male athlete rep at Gymnastics Canada. So I'm the women's athlete rep. He's the men's athlete rep. So just the voice of the athletes on the boards and stuff like that. And we were just kind of talking about all that stuff and just like how crazy, I guess, it is that the two athletes reps were NCAA, and Gymnastics Canada is not the biggest fan of NCAA because they yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But we're like, obviously that's gotta mean something, about, the leadership and all these skills that you learn through the NCAA that maybe they don't see the value in. And maybe it's just a coincidence that we both got selected, but we're like, it's probably like not. Like
Mhm.
there were some good values and strengths that we brought forward in our applications and stuff that made them decide to choose us. So we were just having a conversation about that kind of stuff, our NCAA journeys. This was like after our season was done this year. So it was like probably May. It was like around graduation. And we're just trying to figure out like, are you going to try and stay? Are you going to try and do the visa stuff? Like just trying to figure out what was next. And we were just like kind of reflecting on our time here and our experiences. And it's just like, wow, I really wish, more Canadians got to experience this, because we both didn't really know much about it. We took that leap of faith, did it. It ended up being life-changing experiences for us. So we were like, you know what? And like some of his teammates were there, and like we all kind of were brainstorming together. And it's like, you know what? Maybe we could do something with this. And especially with it not being super popular or common, or even, I wouldn't say liked, but maybe just common for
Mhm.
NCAA and elite gymnastics to mix in Canada. But we're like, we're both examples of it being possible, and a thing that people can do. So that's when we kind of came up with the idea of enhanced pathways. Honestly, we were at a bar just hanging out. It was like
Yeah.
one of the first weekends after season was done. We're like, let's go. We just basically like finished our NCAA career. And that's when we kind of had that idea. And then from then on, we started working multiple times a week on it, because we were done with season, just a couple weeks left of school. And basically, it's like an NCAA recruiting agency that helps Canadian athletes understand the NCAA path and get connected into it. Because I think the biggest thing with Canadian gymnasts is that they don't necessarily understand the path itself, or how to get involved, or that it's even possible for them to do, just because there's not many Canadians that do it. So it's all about, I guess, raising awareness of that, bringing attention to how it works, helping them through the process, answer questions, connecting them with coaches, kind of all things NCAA. We're still figuring out like the details on how it works, but we have that big picture. We have a client that we're working with right now. We're
Mhm.
helping her get connected to the NCAA coaches and just understand that process. And it's been really cool so far.
Are you starting out with just gymnastics, or are you going to hopefully build into other sports, help other athletes, or where do you hope that enhanced pathways takes off to?
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things, and he's like, he wants to do other sports as well, like, immediately. I'm like, "Okay." Because 'cause I'm still working here.
Relax.
He's
Yeah.
in Canada right now, so he's able to kinda network a little bit more with, like, I guess, our target population. But I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'm a little far to be able to be doing all of that." But he's like, "Yeah, I talked to this person, they play soccer. They're interested. Do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, we can try to figure out how
Mhm.
to do that." I mean, we wouldn't be able to have the coaching connections, but, I mean, the path, I'm sure, is pretty similar.
Mhm.
So I mean, I'm kinda open to seeing how it goes. We're still in the parts of getting it figured out and understanding kinda how to connect the athletes and stuff, but I know, for example, baseball has so many Canadians, even on
Mhm.
the team here, there was, like, 5 of them, like, in the last
Yeah.
couple of years. So it's definitely something that most sports do, so I'm open to it.
Yeah, I think it's so cool what you guys are doing. And one thing I've always loved is the most positive impact you can make on yourself is a positive impact on others. And that's exactly what you guys are doing with Enhanced Pathways. If you are listening to this, if you're a Canadian gymnast like Emma, be sure to reach out to her. She can help you find a way to the NCAA and just talk about your time in the NCAA. What was that like? And just what was that experience for you?
Yeah, it was honestly life-changing. I was not the biggest fan of gymnastics coming into it. Like, I just especially coming off of that Olympic stuff, like, I was kinda down, not the best mindset, and being here completely changed that for me. You know, the relationships with the girls, the teammates, the coaches, the staff, and everyone in life skills, like, all the athletic stuff in general here. Huskers are such a big thing, and I didn't realize it was going to be like that when I got here, but all the resources that we've been given to us and the connections and the people have been so amazing. Competing in NCAA gymnastics was so fun. That was an experience that I would not have ever had if I stuck to just competing for Canada too. Just the celebrations and the fun competition themes and the leotards and just everything that came with it was just such a great experience. Um, I mean, I can't really think of any complaints. It
Yeah.
was a really great time.
Yeah, I love that for you. I end every conversation with the same question. I just ask if you could go back and tell your younger self, maybe high school Emma, just one piece of advice regarding the mental side of gymnastics, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like the biggest thing would be like that it's all gonna be okay. I feel
Mm.
like I have a tendency to overthink and overanalyze everything before it even happens. So just like trusting the process, letting things happen how they're gonna happen, and just know that it's gonna be okay and it's gonna work out how it's supposed to in the end.
I love that. Emma, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Your story is awesome and just your career is unbelievable. So thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you again to Emma for sharing her journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.